All right, so now let's talk about sex-linked or X-linked genes. So remember, humans have 46 chromosomes, and two of those are called sex chromosomes, right? The rest are autosomal. Those sex chromosomes are either X or Y, and in order to be genetically considered a female, you'd have an XX, and to be genetically considered a male, you'd have an XY. Um, so what that means is sperm determines the sex of the child because X always, the eggs in females always provide that X. And then during meiosis in males, the X and Y genes separate, right? So females can only contribute an X to a offspring, and males can then contribute an X or a Y to the offspring. X-linked or sex-linked, they mean the same thing. Genetic disorders are disorders that reside on X chromosomes. These disorders are almost always recessive, and because they're located on the X chromosome, there's some unusual patterns. So, an example in humans of X-linked disorders is colorblindness, hemophilia, and then muscular dystrophy. If you don't know what hemophilia and muscular dystrophy are, I would suggest you Google them. This is fun. It's asking, can you see the numbers that are inside there? If you cannot see some of those numbers, then you should probably talk to your parents and say, hey, I should probably get my eyes checked. Because what this does is it's a common color blindness. A lot of times, people who are colorblind, not all cases, but a lot of times, the most common is red green, which is why those of you who can see it, you're like, oh, it's red and green, like the two different colors in there. But if you can't see those, that's because that's the most common form of color blindness. So X-linked genetic disorders are more common in males, and that's because X-linked disorders are recessive. And because males only inherit one X, there's a good chance that they could be the ones with that disease. Females can be unaffected carriers of the trait. So down here we have examples, right? Let's say trait A is recessive. So in order to experience the disease, you need to have a recessive A. So an affected female, so it is possible for for females to have it, but it's more common for males. An affected female would be XA, right? Because females have two X's. An unaffected female would be X capital A, X capital A. So this female doesn't have it. This female does. This heterozygous female, though, is a carrier. So she's not affected by the disease, whatever this A indicates, because she has that dominant A there. But she does carry the recessive, so she can pass it off to her offspring. An affected male would be X little a and then Y. And because they only inherit one X, there's no chance for them to inherit a second X from the other parent to kind of cover up that recessive. And an unaffected male would be X big A Y. So hemophilia is a recessive X-linked disorder in which there is an absence of blood clotting factors. This can lead to excessive bleeding when blood vessels are broken. So if people who have hemophilia can get a cut and have a really hard time stopping the bleeding. The royal bloodline is a really interesting one to look at. So Queen Victoria of England was a carrier of hemophilia and passed down the disorder to her son, as well as some of her other daughters who were also carriers. So we've got Queen Victoria here, and she married Albert. And then their kids are right here, and it's showing you carrier females are circles and hemophiliac males, so males who are affected by it, have this box. All right, so Queen Victoria had 8 children, 5 girls and 3 boys. One of her children, I'm assuming it's Leopold, I say Leo because I'm not sure, had hemophilia. The other 2 sons were normal. The other children were normal. So if we were to think about this, what I would do is I would work backwards. So I would put, if I know that all the other kids were normal and Leo was not, I would put him down here in this box and he would be XY because he's a male and he has that recessive gene, so the little h. Queen Victoria is a female, obviously, and Prince Albert was a male. But remember, she was a carrier. So she's going to be X big H, X little h. She carries that. Prince Albert was normal, but he did have, was normal. He did not have the recessive disorder. So he's going to have a big H. So that means when I cross the 2 here, these 2 females are going to be normal. However, this female will be a carrier. This son would be normal, and poor Leo over here gets the genetic disease. However, X-linked genes aren't always genetic disorders. There are some genes that are found on the X chromosome that don't negatively affect the individual. An example of that is a calico cat or the eye color of fruit flies. So if you have a cat that's orange, black, and white, that's calico, and that gene is located on the X chromosome. All right, so lastly, let's try this. In fruit flies, the gene for eye color is located on the X chromosome. Red eyes are dominant and white eyes are recessive. Cross a red-eyed male with a heterozygous female. So I'm going to go find a red-eyed male, which is right here, and I would put those 2 over here. So it'd be X big R and Y. And a heterozygous female, so X big R, X little r. I would fill this in, and I'm going to let you practice that on your own. Pause this video here so that way you can figure out if you got it right. All right, we're going to go back, and I'm going to go over pedigrees real quick because we saw pedigrees right here. This family tree with the circle and squares is a pedigree. So we're going to go over that real quick so you're able to do the practices by yourself. Okay, so pedigree charts are considered the family trees of genetics. They have keys, so you'll always see Roman numerals down the side that indicates the generation. So first generation, second generation, third generation. Males are indicated by a box and females are indicated by a circle. If they're affected, they'll be shaded in. If they're deceased, there'll be a line through them. There's codes for twins and all this other stuff, but we don't really need to know about that right now. So if you get stuck, you can go down here and read like the speaker notes of this PowerPoint, but I'm just going to go through it. A pedigree is a chart of genetic history of family over several generations. Scientists or a genetic counselor would find out about your family history and make this into a chart to analyze it. So here we've got females and males. Again, if you want to go back and look at it, there's a million notes in here that you can look at. Here's the twins. So examples are if you are a fraternal twin, these horizontal lines indicate marriage. So this would be marriage between a woman and a man. If you're a fraternal twin, you'll be connected this way. If you're an identical twin, you'll be in a triangle. Here's married couples. So again, this indicates a line of marriage. It also indicates like that these two individuals are responsible for these offspring, basically. So they might not be married, but like in real life, but this is just saying that this man and this woman made these three kids. And this is what siblings look like. So we have a line saying these two individuals got together, we come down and we have a line, and this could be like only one individual here or two or like 15, however many kids that they have. So this is what a pedigree chart would look like. We've got a male and a female. They got together. They had three kids. This female and this male also had three kids, and one of the daughters from this family and one of the sons from this family got together and had two sons and a daughter. So here, if it's filled in, they're affected. If it's an X-linked, I don't think you'll see that very often. Normally you just see filled in and not filled in. If they're dead, they'll have a line through them. So when you're interpreting a pedigree chart to determine if the pedigree chart shows an autosomal X-linked trait or disease, if most of the males in the pedigree are affected, the disorder is X-linked. If there is 50-50 between men and women, then the disorder is autosomal. So what that means is if most of the guys in there are the ones that are affected, you're going to find that on the X sex gene. If it's not, if it's 50-50, like men and women have it, then it's autosomal. So it could be on any of the other genes, not just the sex gene. So if we look at this, are we looking at an autosomal or an X-linked trait? So I count 1, 2, 3 men with it and 1, 2, 3 women. Because it's 50-50, this is probably going to be autosomal, which it is on the next slide. We also need to be able to decide whether it's a dominant or a recessive trait. So in order to do that, to determine whether the disorder is dominant or recessive, if the disorder is dominant, one of the parents must have the disorder. If the disorder is recessive, neither of the parents have to have the disorder because they could be heterozygous. So let's look at this. We've got one affected parent here and one affected parent here. Because the parents are affected and their offspring are affected, and then because two of these parents, one is affected, this is going to be dominant because the parents have it, so the kids are going to have it. This one, though, we look at the parents and they're not affected, but the kids are, which means these parents have to be heterozygous. They have to carry the gene, but they're passing it down. So this one's going to be recessive, meaning mom and dad have the recessive gene, but they're not affected by it because they have that dominant to carry it, to cover it up. So in summary, pedigrees are family trees that explain your genetic history. Pedigrees are used to find out the probability of a child having a disorder in a particular family. To begin to interpret a pedigree, you need to determine if the disease or condition is autosomal or X-linked, and then find out if it's dominant or recessive. All right, and that's all we're going over. So now that you've got all of that information, you're going to work on the sex-linked practice and the pedigree practice. So, oops, I already uploaded that video. Go over here, back to Canvas, and we've got the sex-linked practice and the pedigree practice. So these are the two things that you'll be submitting for today. If you need to go back and watch the videos, please do. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. I might not be able to respond as quickly, but I will get to them as best as I can. Y'all have a great day and a great weekend.